Please note, this episode contains discussions of sexual assault and sexual harassment that may be disturbing for some listeners.
Welcome to The Perch. I am Angelina.
And I'm Kenna.
And today is the Met Gala. It is the first Monday of May.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see all the costumes and dresses and such.
Yes. I can't remember the name of the theme, but I heard it includes flowers, and I'm very ready for that.
I think it's something like Sleeping Beauty or...
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, something like that.
I know one thing that I was thinking about, and people have brought it up so many times, specifically when Doja Cat went to that Fashion Week show.
Yeah.
Bedazzled in, like, red jewels.
Yeah.
That, like, it seems kind of dystopian, because everything that's going on in the world, and, like, they're wearing all these, like, extravagant costumes, which is fun, but then also, like, we're not being, like, attacked, like we're in a state of peace in America. But that's debatable.
Yeah, that is debatable. It's very interesting seeing the way that celebrities like get really done up for these like events for like this one day, spending all this money and time on their hair, makeup, costumes and whatever, when there's a lot of other things going on in the world that money could go towards. Or like just seeing like the class separation between celebrities and like high class people that can go to these events versus like no, maybe more like average people that don't have that like time and money and
influence
status.
too. Yeah, because just like it's really dystopian at times. I know one thing we were talking about is it reminds us of the Hunger Games and the people in the Capitol.
The Capitol, it's so weird seeing like the comparisons of like the Met Gala and these fashion events with like Capitol sort of looks that they have in like the movies and such, or like even the descriptions in the books. Yeah, because it is strange.
It is really strange. And I know like with specifically Katniss's prep teams in the books, in the movies they don't look as crazy. I'll be honest with you, they look like fairly normal. Like, okay, their hair's dyed. For all we know, they could just be alternative. Yeah. But like Venia, she's described as a woman with aqua hair and gold tattoos. Flavius has orange corkscrews and consistently is reapplying his purple lipstick. And I think the kind of craziest of them all is Octavia, who is described as having her skin being dyed a pale shade of pea green. Her whole skin. She dyed her whole body.
That is so green. Weird. Like,
it is.
Having it be green, especially since, like, most people's undertones are, like, red because of your blood and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, having it green totally, like, cuts it out, because it's, like, complementary colors or whatever. So it just seems like she probably looks dead. Probably looks very sickly.
But it's really interesting because, like, even now, people who have, like, tattoos on their face or, like, different hairstyles, they're kind of shunned in a sense. Like, they have a harder time finding jobs and stuff like that. And so it's just really interesting to see, these very high-class people being dressed in this very eccentric way. Because, like, I know one thing, specifically when Sophia Richie had her wedding, it's like wealth whispers. It's like you can't tell. Even people talking about the HBO show Succession, like, their clothing is very casual, but if you were to look up all of the brands, it's, like, adding up to thousands per outfit. But, like, it looks very casual. They're like neutrals,
Yeah, it's so strange seeing, like, these brands put out, like, basic t-shirts and stuff, just, like, with their brand names or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we're Supreme, or whatever. It's like,
oh, no, middle school.
Literally, it's like, why is this piece of clothing so expensive? It's like really just being like, these people have money if they can wear it, even though it's just a regular t-shirt that people should just be able to wear and have access to those clothes.
Yeah. And it's just, we were talking about it earlier, but it's just like, it's really, really odd, because even when you look at specifically for the people who did it right, the camp theme for the Met Gala, but like if you compare it to the movie portrayal of people in the Capitol, some of the outfits for like the camp Met Gala were like more like extreme and eccentric, which was like fun. It is fun to look at. Don't get me wrong. Like, no shame if you like the Met Gala. I like the Met Gala. I looking at the outfits. I'm excited to see Zendaya and Taylor Russell tonight.
Zendaya? I'm excited.
And she's on the chair. She's gonna eat it up.
She better. She has to.
There's no way she's not going to.
Yeah.
But, you know, and the Hunger Games just talks about so many important topics, you know, especially with race, you know, even with Katniss Everdeen.
Mm-hmm.
Katniss is described in the book as having straight black hair, olive skin, and gray eyes, like everyone does in the Seam, which is the poorest part of District 12.
Oh, gray eyes? I actually did not know that.
Yeah, they're all supposed to have gray eyes. They're all supposed to have accents, but that's not something that was portrayed in the original trilogy, only in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which came out last year.
It makes sense why that wouldn't be in the movie. I know there's a lot of changes from the movie and the books, and from that description, I know there's theories that people think that Katniss may be, like, Native American or, like, be indigenous from, like, olive skin and, what is it, dark hair?
Yeah, straight black hair.
Those are characteristics of, like, indigenous people, and it would make sense that Katniss, like, that character could be, like, that ethnicity, since, like, if you think about, like, American history, and I think the Hunger Games is supposed to be, like, set
it takes place in America after. It's not really stated what happened, but we do know that the continent itself has been, like, shrunken. If you were to look up a map of Panem, you know, which is the country the Hunger Games takes place in, I believe, like, basically the coasts are all flooded, and so the area they're working with is much smaller.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah, but District 12 is roughly in the area of modern-day Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and West Virginia. And there's a lot of... And you see it more in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes due to Lucy Gray having an Appalachian accent. There's a theory that she's part of the Melanesian people, which is a mix of European, Black, and Native American. And then also she is mixed with her mother, who is described to be white with light hair and blue eyes, the same as her sister Prim. And she gets her features from her father's side, because there is that one thing she mentions early on in the first book is that most people in the Seam have the dark black hair, the olive skin, the gray eyes, and then people like the merchant class in, the town square have, mostly like lighter skin, lighter hair, lighter eyes, like Peeta Millark. Yeah,
that would make sense, since I know, like I was saying, in America's history, a lot of, like, native or, like different, like, ethnic groups or, like, marginalized groups have been, like, oppressed and pushed out, like, into the outer seams of, like, society, and I feel like that's supposed to be similar as in, like, the Hunger Games. I know, like, District 12 and District 11, it's kind of, like, District 11 is predominantly, like black.
Yes, it's predominantly black, and they do agriculture, and it's partially in the South, too. It would be, I don't know the specific states, but, like, if you were to look up a map of Panem, like we're looking at right now, it's primarily in the South, where we did see a lot of agriculture during periods of slavery and Reconstruction in America. So I feel like that's another thing with race, is that when we look at the descriptions for the tributes from the 10th Hunger Games, the 74th, and the 75th, they're all black, and
like District 11.
Exactly. When we see the portrayals of them in the movies, it's a largely black population, and so, because I know there are still a lot of black people in the South who didn't move after the abolishment of slavery. And so it does make sense. It does make sense why there still be a very large black population there. Yeah. But it's just really, really interesting, because I know one thing, in the first book, when Rue and Katniss become allies, Rue mentions that the Peacekeepers are very, very violent. She tells a story of a mentally disabled child who tried to take these night vision sunglasses that they use when they're harvesting at night, to the point where Katniss is like, hearing this makes me feel like District 12 is some sort of safe haven. Of course, people keel over from starvation all the time, but I can't imagine the Peacekeepers murdering a simple-minded child. That's literally what she's thinking, because they don't get to hear much about other districts, and so the games is really the only time where they can interact with people from other districts.
That is so interesting, seeing how, like, the Capitol really tries to separate each district.
Yes.
And, like, make sure there's no interactions, or, like, the real only transportation between districts is, like, the train?
Is the train that's mostly used Because there's a train that's used for, like, kind of, like, supplies. There's one that's used to move people from the capital, and then, like, tributes, like, to and from. And then, like, hovercrafts are used in some cases, but, like, not by people in the districts.
Yeah, obviously not.
But, yeah, it was really interesting to me because, I mean, violence, especially in the industry of agriculture, was very reminiscent to me of slavery and then the Reconstruction period afterwards, where a lot of black people were still working on farms, on plantations, just for very low pay, and they were being exploited. Their work was being exploited, and if they ever kind of, like, stood up for themselves, the answer was violence.
Yeah, we can see that in, like, the first movie.
Yes.
Like, after Rue dies and, like, the District 11, like, people, like fight back.
Yeah,
and,
they do. Yeah, no, you do see it a lot in the movie where, like, they just start, like, trashing, like,
the place.
Yeah, they start trashing where they have the reaping, which is in, like the center of the city.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really interesting to see how Suzanne Collins, the author, kind of, like, pulled from the history of America, of the U.S., and kind of implemented that into her books in the way that the social interactions are, because now we see it focused much more on class, rather than the way it is now, where, like, a lot of systems are focused on, oppression through race, but, like, it's really interesting how they're now more so focused on oppression through class. And, of course, there's always be that intersection between all of them, but then, like, class is much more emphasized, as we were talking with the people in the Capitol, and, like, the big differences, even in accents.
Yeah.
It's so funny, because Candace and Gail are always making fun of Effie's accent.
Yeah. Literally at the start, it's like, may the odds be ever in your favor.
Exactly.
That's my impression of her. But yeah, it really is interesting comparing and contrasting the movie, the book, and, like, real life.
Yeah.
Like, the protests in, like, District 11, that scene looks very similar to, like, footage that we've seen of, like, other, like, police and, like, protesters or rioters or whatever, like, that confrontation and violence that they have.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, the fighting back from District 11 is totally justified.
It is.
It's totally justified. But then just, like, that, the violence that comes from the peacekeepers, from the government, from the policing force, is overwhelming. Like, one thing you see in that scene, because I know exactly what scene you're talking about, is, like, they have peacekeepers, and then, like, you can literally see a hovercraft coming in with more marching out, to just fully overwhelm the people in the district.
It's weird how they call them peacekeepers when they're the ones creating the most violence.
Yeah, it's really ironic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, really interesting to me, and I know one thing, and it's a little bit off topic in terms of, like, our current discussion, but, like, District 11 is primarily made up of black people. In the books, Rue and Thresh, who is the male tribute for District 11. This is 13, 11. They're both described as darker skinned black people, which makes sense because they're working outside in the fields.
Yeah.
But, like, I believe their name is Amandla. I think that's who played Rue in the first movie. I think that's how you pronounce their name. I think they use they, them pronouns.
Okay.
But they were cast as Rue. I loved them as Rue.
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah.
And it hit so hard, but, like, people were really, really upset that Rue was black in the movies, even though, the character is black in the books.
I wrote an essay for, like, about the Hunger Games in one of my film history classes, and I remember reading, like, articles about that, about people being like, why is Rue black? She's not supposed to be, even though she is supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird seeing how people get so worked up by that, even though in the book her character is supposed to be black.
Yeah, in reality she probably should have been a little darker too.
Yeah.
Not to hate on Amandla, but, like, darker skinned black person working outside with their hands.
Yeah.
So, like, it would have made sense. I love Amandla's portrayal either way. I wouldn't change it. But it's just really interesting because there were a lot of people on the internet, who said, like, oh, I don't feel as empathetic towards Rue now that she's black, because it's like, oh, but like she should be white because like Katniss was like, oh, Prim reminds me, like the Prim and Rue, they remind me of each other. No, like the general spirit and the fact that they're both like 12 and small.
Yeah, I think that's what she meant.
That
Like,
is what she
their
meant.
personality, or their like you said, being young and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Because just like imagine, because obviously like, Katniss volunteered for Rue, but then if she didn't, that would have been 12, like two 12-year-olds
Yeah.
in the Hunger Games. You know? It's already crazy enough when 12-year-olds get raped because, especially for Prim, she only had her name in there once.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times Rue had it in there because she had siblings that she would support.
That makes sense. It would make sense if Rue had her name.
Multiple times. But, like, it's really, really, really interesting, you know, just to see people's, you know, the reaction towards race in the books, you know, how it plays into the composition of District 11, and then also just, like, people's reaction to, like, seeing it adapted.
Mm-hmm. It is very interesting seeing how young they start reaping, like at 12 years old. And when does the reaping stop? Like, what age is it?
It ends at 18.
Okay, that makes sense. But how they're so young but are exposed to so much. And like, it's interesting seeing the way that the Capitol views the tributes. They're like, oh, these are your tributes, they're gonna be fighting. And like, you know, the like propaganda video at the beginning of the reaping ceremony?
Yes.
Where Snow's like, our brave warriors and strong women and strong man fight. That little thing. It's interesting seeing how they really like make this very like violent and brutal event seem like this like something that is very brave and like brings honor to your district. But the Capitol people like, oh, these young kids, they're the tributes. But in like the second movie when Peeta's like, oh, if it weren't for the baby, the like total switch that the
baby
Capitol,
bomb.
Yeah, Peeta's bringing the baby bombs. Well, Gale's bringing the bombs on babies.
No.
It's true though. But like the way that the Capitol people, like the citizens there, really switch up.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, not a baby.
Yeah.
But
when the baby's not even born yet.
Yeah, the baby's not born, and there's literal children fighting for their lives.
Yeah. I've seen people compare it to like the pro-life, pro-choice debates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, why do you care about these children in the womb more than like passing gun control laws to protect children getting shot in their classrooms?
Yes.
You know, so I know that's another thing that people bring up a lot when we're having this discussion, you know, between like the baby bomb and, you know, and their reaction from the Capitol.
Yeah.
And then in comparison to like the conversations we're having in our modern day.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see that because it's very much like the Capitol wants control over their tributes. The tributes have very little control in like their choice, and they have to be presented in a certain way, like we could see in like the chariot scene. Like all of them have to look a certain way and design a certain way and portray like a certain idea. Like Katniss and Peeta, like, wow. Well, I know not in the first scene, they're not like star-crossed lovers or whatever yet.
Yeah.
But I know like characters like Glimmer and Cato, like Cato's like this strong guy. That's the character that he's supposed to play in the games.
Exactly.
And Glimmer's supposed to be the the sweetheart.
Yeah, no, it's more so like she's supposed to be the sexy one. It's they use that adjective in the book, which is really like she's probably below, I think she's about 16 or 17. Like, she shouldn't be having to portray herself as sexy to the entire nation to be able to survive in the Hunger Games.
Yeah, that is weird. Especially since, like, they have to portray these, like, character ideas so that they can possibly, like, get, like, what is it, the
gifts.
The gifts.
Yeah,
that's
from
one.
the sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because just, like, there's a quote from the first games that talks about Glimmer. The girl tribute from District 1, looking provocative in a see-through gold gown, steps up to the center of the stage to join Caesar for her interview. You can tell her mentor didn't have any trouble coming up with an angle for her. With that flowing blonde hair, emerald green eyes, and her body tall and lush, she's sexy all the way. And the fact that, like, Katniss can see that.
Yeah.
And, like, she's aware of that with the fact that, like, she's got this see-through dress.
Yeah.
You know? And she's on stage in front of the entire country because it's mandatory watching.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone can see her.
It is quite interesting seeing, like, even in the movies, like, I know they don't have that, like, very, like, see-through dress
Exactly,
for Glimmer,
yeah.
but I feel like most of the female characters, like, oh, what are you wearing? Or, like, give us a turn. Or, like, I know for Katniss it was like, oh, like, the whole thing where she's spinning.
Yeah.
But I feel like the female characters are definitely sexualized.
Yeah. But even then, you were talking about how she doesn't have the see-through dress in the movies. Mm-hmm. Hers is still the shortest dress out of anybody who comes on stage.
That is true.
So they did portray that, and the way that she kind of, like, swishes on stage. She kind of, like, saunters on stage.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's just, it's really odd, you know, the sexualization of the girls. But then it also happens to, the guys. You know, the guys, the boys, you know, with Finnick.
Yeah.
And because he wins when he's 14, youngest winner ever. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years later, he's quite literally being pimped out by President Snow to just people in the district, you know. And I believe it's in Mockingjay, the third book, he talks about how, you know, President Snow used to sell my body. You know, if anyone thought he was desirable, he would just be given to them.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just like, or else he would kill someone that you love. Like, that was always his tactic again and again and again, was like, if you don't do this, even if it's just selling your body, I'll kill, like, your entire family, I'll kill your girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just like, oh my goodness.
Is that how, I wonder if, you know how
Joanna Mason?
Yeah. She, everyone, she says that everyone she loves was killed.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that she said no.
Yeah, to something. Probably to that.
Most likely, since she was also young. She won, like, the 70th? It was, like, not too long ago.
Yeah, she won, like, a few years before Katniss and Peeta did.
Yeah.
I remember.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, like, listening to Finnick's monologue at the, like, in the third movie when they're trying to get Peeta and whatever back from the Capitol. Finnick's, like, talking about that.
Yeah.
The first time I watched the movie, I didn't realize what he was talking about. I was just focused on, like, the action, and then, like, rewatching it, like, multiple times, because I watched that movie. I watched the movie series way too much.
Yeah.
But, like, rewatching it, I'm like, oh my god, Finnick's been through a lot.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's because of the ratings, they didn't, like, kind of, to be frank, get to the point of it, because, like, literally we know that, like, Finnick is sexualized, because, like, even Candace, when we get her introduction to Finnick, you know, when she's introducing us to Finnick, she's like, oh yeah, he just kind of, like, has a whole bunch of lovers whenever he comes to the Capitol. You know, but then, like, his first line when he's, like, you know, reading to the camera is, like, President Snow used to sell me, my body, that is. You know, and he says it in a flat, removed tone. You know, because it's been going on, he's in his early 20s at this point. Yeah. You know, it's been going on for, at the very least, 5 years. I think it's a little more than that, but, like, 5 years of having to do that.
Yeah.
You know, every year he's going back to the Capitol as a mentor.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, I know in the second movie, Haymitch is like, this is the game. Like, you're never getting off this train. You're, like, stuck in the Hunger Games forever. Like, once you win, you don't really win.
Yeah.
You're stuck under Snow's control.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, like, Peeta and Katniss kind of had, like, that safeguard. Like, let's say hypothetically there wasn't the revolution that happened. Mm-hmm. And, like, things just stayed the same. I feel like Katniss and Peeta wouldn't have to necessarily deal with what Finnick dealt with because they had each other.
Yeah.
And people would want to be like, oh, that their happy marriage, let's see their story every year, every time. Whereas Finnick, whenever the Hunger Games would be, like, he'd probably get that same Snow being like, hey, we need you.
Exactly. And I think another thing is, I mean, their children might have been subjected to it because, I mean, the only reason that they got engaged to be married in Catching Fire was because President Snow came to Katniss's house and scared the crap out of her. And so she was like, we should just get married to Peeta. You know, Peeta was obviously hurt because Peeta's in love with her. But, like Haymitch was telling her, like, it never ends. You know, like, you'll probably be in some capacity forced to have children,
Mm-hmm.
or like pressured so hard, and then your children will, because people always, there's always theories that like it's rigged. There's theories that it's rigged, which makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Let's be honest. Their children will probably be reaped.
Yeah, and I know Katniss makes a point where it's like she doesn't want children. Not necessarily that she doesn't want them, she just doesn't want them to be in that society.
Exactly,
that they're stuck
yeah.
in. That's why at the end, like the very, very end,
In
like
the epilogue, yeah.
yeah, where she does have like 2 kids, it's like because she's freed herself from that.
Yeah. And then even then, it took her some time.
Yeah.
Because then I think I did the math, and they only have kids when she's about like 30. And by the end of the book, she's about like 17, 18. So that they waited like a full decade,
That would make sense.
She waited like a full decade. And by then they had torn down like the arenas, like they had a new school curriculum. Like Panem was like, I don't know if they renamed it, but Panem was rebuilding itself, under, a new leader and a very drastically different set of social rules.
Yeah. I know when Katniss, she wasn't reaped. Prim was reaped and she volunteered.
Yes.
That would be really scary to be, like, now she's so used to being, like, hidden and, like, no one hearing her voice.
Yeah.
And then when she has this, like, platform, because she's a tribute and everyone wants to hear what she says, it's like, wow, everyone's looking at me.
Yeah.
People have ideas of what I should look like and what I should say. And we can see how the Capitol wants to, like, adjust her appearance and the other tributes, like, how they look. Like, for example, their body hair.
Mm-hmm.
They, like, don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of played off as, like, laughs, but, like, I think one of the early chapters in the books when Candace first gets to the game, the first line of the chapter is, and it's just, like, Venia, someone on her prep team, just waxing her clean.
Yeah.
Her entire body clean. And she's naked the entire time they're doing this, and so they, her legs, her arms, her torso, her underarms, parts of her eyebrows, they're just waxing her totally clean, even though she's gonna be wearing clothes in the arena.
Yeah.
They're just completely waxing her, removing all the hair off, and even after they're done with that, they make her stand there naked while they go around her with tweezers looking for stray hairs that they missed.
That is so uncomfortable.
Right?
And, like, puts her in a really vulnerable position.
It does.
Because I feel like there's, like, 2 reasons that the Capitol does that. Like, the first being, like, oh, we want them to be clean-shaven and look, I don't know, groomed or nice. But I feel like the second reason would be, in the arena, they really strip back every resource that, like, the tributes have.
Yeah.
They try to give them as little as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of like a humiliation tactic, I feel, too.
And also, like, body hair, it keeps you warm.
Exactly.
It literally keeps you warm. And in the Hunger Games, like, the first one, it's in a forest. It's
in a forest, yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably, like, really cold there.
Yeah. Candace talks about being cold, like, repeatedly. The first night of the games, this girl lights a fire.
I know, like, in the first movie when that happens, when the girl lights the fire, Katniss looks annoyed.
Yeah.
She's like, for real?
In the book, she literally calls her the biggest idiot in the games. She's like, and I'm camped out right next to the biggest idiot in the games. I was like, Katniss! Yeah, she does not hold punches in her monologue.
She just doesn't hold punches.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, like, kind of, like, going forward on the body hair thing, is I really wish they included this in the movies. But after the games, she's, like, super emaciated. She's very emaciated, and she's dirty, which makes sense. She was in the Hunger Games for, like, they were in there for, like, about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But, like, they wanted to change her cosmetically. They wanted to give her plastic surgery. So when she puts on her dress to kind of accept the award, which is, like, this really pretty yellow dress in the movies and in the books.
Yeah.
There's, like, padding on it to, like, fill in her breasts and her torso, areas that she lost weight. But they wanted to give her plastic surgery without her consent. But Haymitch and Cinna, her stylists were like, no, like, you can't do this. That's the only reason they didn't do that. If she didn't have Cinna and Haymitch advocating for her so hard, she would have been changed cosmetically without any say in the matter.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting point, too, because Tigress...
Yes.
She I know in like the Mockingjay, like the second Mockingjay movie, part
Yes,
two.
the second part two.
Yeah, we can see Tigress, and she has like a cat-like face.
She literally has whiskers.
Yeah, and it's like Snow didn't think I was pretty enough, and seeing how that affected her compared to her in Songbirds and Snakes.
Yes. The comparison is crazy because, like, oh yeah, my cousin Tigress. That Tigress? I think, like, everyone was like, wait, that Tigress?
Yeah, it's so crazy seeing, like, the difference in her character from then to Mockingjay.
Yeah, but I think a nice thing is you can kind of see that kindness she has in the ballad carry over with the fact that she's giving them all the food she has. She's, like, literally hiding them. She's giving them blankets and, like, all this clothing when they eventually, like, leave towards the end of the war to head towards Snow's mansion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that she has a little bit more, like, she has more walls and, like, guards up because, like, life experience, right?
Yeah.
But she still definitely has that compassion and kindness.
Yeah.
For Katniss and her group.
Yeah, because she's older than President Snow.
You're right.
Yeah, that's his older cousin, you know? And it's really interesting because another thing that it's kind of skimmed over in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but I think that's purposeful because of it being from Coriolanus's point of view.
Mm-hmm. Is
it like when they're talking about, you know, the war, not like the rebellion we see in the trilogy, but like the war that led to the Hunger Games. Tigress has this line of like we've all done things we're not proud of, you know, and Coriolanus sees that as like she sold her body, you know, to like get money to pay for food or to get food because they were all starving.
Yeah.
You know? And the fact that he looks down on her for that, he's like, oh, that's basically sometimes all that, oh, that's gross. You know, not the fact like, oh my gosh, like it's so, like, she shouldn't have to do this, but like he's just like, that's kind of gross. Like I'm kind of grossed out by that.
Yeah. Snow is,
he's crazy.
He's crazy. He looks down upon that on his cousin.
Exactly.
But then he forces, like later in his life, he forces
exactly
tributes to get in that situation.
Exactly.
To hold power.
Yeah, and even when Lucy Gray sings, I think it's the song she sings at the interviews, but like there's even the implication of like maybe doing some type of sex work, you know, voluntary or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like, oh, I don't like that. Like he sees it as very dirty, you know. He's
privileged.
He's very privileged, yeah. And you know, it's really interesting to see because they're cousins. You know, his father was the one who was, you know, rich. He worked in the military, you know. So it kind of makes me wonder like how exactly him and Tigress are related because they never do get into that. But
yeah,
it's really weird, you know, the contrast between like him like looking down and seeing this as like gross and dirty, you know, to like him forcing children to do it later in his life.
It is quite interesting seeing not that shift in perspective, but it just seems like he wants to be the one that holds all the power. Obviously, Snow falls on top, you know. You know that line.
Yes.
Yeah. But he's like, I'm the one that has all this privilege, all this power, so I'm going to make everyone else do the dirty work around me.
How the games were before and after Snow is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Because they were very, like, gritty before. They were very just, like, straightforward. We're just going to throw all these kids in this place and they're just going to, we're give them a few weapons and they're going to, like, murder each other. You know, like, that was it.
And even, like, didn't they say how they were thinking about ending it possibly? Like,
yeah.
in Songbirds and Snakes, they're like, this isn't really getting anywhere.
Yeah. The reason they involved the students was to kind of, like, give that connection between, like, the Capitol. Because no one in the Capitol is watching either.
Yeah.
Like, no one wanted to watch that. And then, you know, Coriolanus kind of like, oh, maybe if we do betting, you know, and all this and this. And because he gives, like, a list of, like, things are going to change at the end and the epilogue for the ballad. Like, things he wants to add. Or things we're working on adding because at the end, when he gets back from District 12, after his, like, peacekeeper stint, you know, he goes to the university and he's working under Dr. Gall.
Yeah.
And he's basically, like, a game maker. He's interning, but, like, he's basically just giving them ideas. Yeah. With all, like, the crazy stuff he's coming up with his, like, demented mind. But, yeah, no, it's, like, I was, like, listening to the epilogue, and I'm just like, dude, what the heck?
Snow is.
Yeah, he's the one who suggested the Victor's Village.
Yeah.
And, like, we see that as, like, a point of separation between the districts, because it's, like, the capital, the people in the district, and then the victors who live in a totally separate part.
Even more separation.
They're, like, creating this very awkward third class, which sucks probably the most for, you know, the not career districts. So the career districts are 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah.
And so it's just, like, they're creating this separation and this unnecessary class divide, you know, to further disparage relationship and community.
Yeah, because if like there isn't any communication and community, people won't be able to stick up and like stand up for each other because they literally won't know what's going on in the districts. I feel like that's similar to like real life with like, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of separate like the freeways. Those are separations of different cities, and you could see like a shift from certain communities.
Yeah.
Between the freeways.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good thing to mention, because like if freeways aren't just like plowing through communities, historically it'll be black communities, black or queer communities, then it's creating some divide between people.
And we can see how that divide really worked for Snow for a long time, 75 years, until Katniss kind of started that. Well, people kind of had talks of being like kind of starting a revolution here and there, but not until Katniss like kind of won the games and started pushing back at Snow. People were like, wait a second, we got someone here that we can all collectively unite with and fight
the
with.
Mockingjay.
The Mockingjay.
But it's really interesting because like you were saying, like Katniss was the person they decided they could lean on and trust to kind of like lead them through this rebellion. But like District 12 was like really apprehensive. They were really, really scared.
Well,
you know?
It makes sense.
Yeah, I know it does make sense.
What is it? Snow blows up District 12?
Yeah, he does. He blows up District 12. He completely obliterates it. He firebombs it.
Yeah. That's crazy, especially with his history behind it.
Right?
He really said, done.
Yeah.
Erased.
And, like, he has PTSD surrounding bombings because when he is a mentor and they're touring the arena in the ballad, bombs go off.
Yeah.
And he's getting, like, flashbacks to the war, you know, when he was a kid, and he's really distressed, which makes sense. I'm not, like, invalidating that, but then, like, he goes on, he's like, yeah, no, like, I'm gonna bomb this entire district. I'm gonna kill, like, everyone in this district. I'm just like, that's crazy.
I don't know what Snow's logic is.
He has no logic. That's a trick question.
It's, like, twisted, for real.
I'm just like, what is... Like, this man's crazy.
Yeah, he's been through all this traumatic stuff, like, literally been hungry.
It's like in a reverse card. I'm gonna turn it back on you.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like, he's been hungry and starving before and had to eat, what is it, paste?
Yeah, he talked about eating paste one time.
Yeah, and it's like, you would think, having experienced that, you wouldn't want to put that onto others.
Yeah.
Creating the Hunger Games,
Yeah.
you know?
I'm just like, he has, like, no chill.
He really doesn't.
I'm just like, dude.
And you could even see that when he's older and...
Yeah,
like
he's, like, kind of maniacal.
Yeah, the way he talks to Katniss.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he does always tell the truth.
He does, and I think that's even scarier.
Yeah, because he's, like, he has no shame to what he does.
He does. He has no shame, and he thinks he's totally valid, because I know, like, when he's having these conversations with Dr. Gall in the ballad, you know, they mostly revolve, like, they boil down every single time to human nature. What is human nature? Lucy Gray thinks that, you know, we're inherently good, and the circumstances we're put into, you know, affect the way that we act. You know, it's very much like the nurture versus nature debate.
Yeah.
You know, and Lucy Gray thinks that it's, you know, it's nurture, how you're raised, your environment. But with, you know, Dr. Gall and later Snow, you know, Dr. Gall just thinks that people are inherently violent.
Yeah.
And that the Hunger Games proves that, but, like, you can't put people in this very controlled police situation, literally, like, punish them if they're not violent, and then be like, yes, no, this is human nature, us, like, putting them in these circumstances.
Yeah. And then for some, like, Dr. Gall, like, twists Snow's brain to being like, this whole world is the Hunger Games.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah, Yeah, like literally like the never-ending war.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Hunger Games is to both of them. Is like we have to keep the war going. Like it can't be these battles where like it affects the capital. It only should affect the districts.
Yeah, and we even see in the first Hunger Games movie how he talks to the game maker. What's the?
I think it's Seneca Crane.
Yeah, that guy, the one with the funny
the funny sideburns and beard.
Yeah, like we can see how Snow's like, I don't really like underdogs.
Yeah.
He's like, I've been to District 12. It's gross.
Yeah, he literally calls it like a backwater district multiple times in the ballad. He's just like, God, people from the district are such animals. I hate it here. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy seeing how he talks about like lower class society.
Exactly.
Just like seeing the way that the classes are separated in this franchise compared to real life is crazy. And like we're having the Met Gala, and we're having all like glorification of celebrities and influencers and whatever. Seeing how Suzanne Collins really got it right.
Yeah, and like the crazy thing is she got the idea while like flipping between a reality TV show and like news broadcasting from the war in the Middle East.
Whoa.
And like it kind of just like came together in her brain of like, oh, like that's really weird that like when you think of these two things together, they don't seem to go together, but if you plan it right, it's kind of just like this perfect dystopian idea, you know? And so that's what she did, and she did a very good job.
She did an amazing job. Like even now, like her whole story like seems so well put together.
It's very solid.
Like, yeah, it is solid. And we can tell how, like, the other book franchises and, like, Divergent and whatever.
Divergent.
They really were like, oh, we could do the same thing.
Yeah.
No, they can't.
It's very unique. The Hunger Games is a very unique series, you know, and she thought out all these things just so clearly.
Yeah.
And I wish we studied, because like my sister read the first book in one of her summer school classes.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't we read this book? It's so good.
I would have preferred to read the whole Hunger Games series and like analyze it. Well, I did already do that. But like for school.
Exactly. Get a grade on it.
Because I think I would do really well, and I think other people would be quite interested in it.
Yeah, because I mean it holds up really well.
I think so.
It holds up really well. And it's, especially when you're talking about and compared to other, like, kind of YA dystopian novels that were coming out at the time, they were kind of just, like, pumping them out.
Yeah.
But, like, she thought this through. I mean, she could have made, like, books for, like, Hamish, for Finnick, but she decided that the story she had to tell next was Coriolanus Snow. And that was, like, 10 years after Mockingjay came out. It's like there was this decade gap between the books. She drops this one, makes a movie about it, and she's disappeared.
But it still works. Like,
right?
It still is so sound and makes sense.
Yeah.
So the movies that came out, like you said, a decade before the books that came out.
Yeah. So now, like, even, and it's a little funny, but, like, when people write fan fiction about the Hunger Games, they either only write it from other characters' perspectives, because there's a few really popular fan fictions that are the entire trilogy from Peeta's perspective.
I want to read those.
I think there might be a few from Hamish's, and then, or, like, they're kind of continuing after the epilogue, you know, either after Peeta and Katniss meet when he comes back to District 12, or after the epilogue when they've already had their children together, you know. And so it's really interesting that even the fandom thinks that, like, this is really, really sound, you know, and the things that they're theorizing on, they aren't plot holes, you know, and they aren't things that are necessary to understand the story. It's just kind of like fun things to talk about with other people who just love what she's done.
Yeah, it's just kind of like more detailed or more specific stories. It would be so interesting. I know we have like all these movies from this franchise, but I would love to have like a mini series of like each like of the tributes like games, especially Hamish's.
Yeah.
Since he had the quarter quill,
yeah,
and
his
it was
quarter
like
quill.
twice the amount of tributes.
And like because one thing they mentioned was like it was a really, really pretty arena, but then like everything was deadly in it.
Yeah.
Like how messed up is that?
That is messed up. But there's just, I feel like this is, franchise is just so good.
It's so good.
Just,
We could talk about it forever.
I want more of it. We could talk about it forever, but we unfortunately can't.
Yes, we're out of time for today, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, and I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend. Rewatching The Hunger Games.
I'm re-listening to all the audiobooks.
Yeah. I'm more of a film person. You're more of a book person.
That's okay. We balance each other out. We found each other's gaps.
Exactly.
We're here for each other.
Yes. And hopefully you enjoyed listening to this episode of The Perch.
We hope to see you next time.
Yes, I am Angelina.
And I'm Kenna.
And that is the episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.